So I got an email from a friend and they were making some birthday cards for a little munchkin and they wanted to know the quickest and easiest way to add a glittery pink border to their cards. And I had to remind them that I don't do pink and glittery, so I wasn't even going to show them how to do it. No, I'm just teasing them. I said I would meet them halfway and I would show them how to add a gold border and they could sub in their pink and their glitter and all would be right with the world again. So I had this document open in Photoshop and they were on the phone and I just went through it. So I'll just stick with this when it works. And for anybody wondering why I have multiple screens in here, these are artboards in Photoshop. That's how I have multiple documents essentially in one. And I think I did another video on artboards already, and if not, and somebody has a question, let me know and I'll do one. Anywho, let me show you two quick and easy different ways to do it depending on what you have. I'm going to zoom into the first one. Now this method assumes that you have some Photoshop pattern files, and if you've bought bundles or design resources anywhere, I'm sure you have PAT files somewhere. So as anybody who's watched one of my videos knows, I like to do things as non-destructively as possible because I always like the opportunity to go back and edit and adjust later without having to start from scratch. So this is what I ended up with real quick, and let me show you how I did it. Rather than using like the marquee tool or whatever and drawing out a square and then filling it in with color and ending up with a pixel-based image that I can't really resize a whole lot later, I'm going to use the custom shape tool. And I'm going to use a rectangle tool because custom shapes are actually vector-based, which means that I can resize them and fiddle with them, and all the way up until the point where I export the document, it's always going to be vector, so I can edit it at any time. So I'm going to choose a rectangle tool. I'm going to come up top, and it doesn't really matter what I set the fill color to because it's going to be covered by the image in a minute. So I'm just going to pick a blue. And the next thing you want to do is come over to the stroke. And as you know, just like the fill, you can set it to none. You can set it to a solid color. You can set it to a gradient. Or you can set it to a pattern, which is what we're going to do. And if you don't have your gold or glittery or pink patterns loaded up already, just click on the gear icon and choose Load or Replace Patterns and go find your file. But once you have them loaded up, I'm going to scroll down to where I have some gold patterns. I'll just pick one. I don't need to do that. And I can set the size right now. I'll just pick 25 so it's big enough we can see it. I can always change this later, so it's not a big deal. And now I'm going to come out in the canvas and draw out my square. Now, here's the other cool thing about vector custom shapes. I don't have to put it in the right spot and I don't have to have it the right size because I can edit this. So to prove that, I'll just draw a rectangle up here in the corner, which isn't where I want it. It's not the right size. Once I have that, I can either use the options bar up top, or I like to go in the properties panel. I'm going to change the width and the height to half of my document size, which is 3000 by 3000 pixels. And then I'm just going to center it up. And again, I'm setting this now, but I can change it at any time. I can come back in and I can change the border. I can make it much thicker if I want. I can make it thinner, and I can always change that. The next thing I would do, I'm going to go over to Bridge, and I'm going to get my image. And with my image selected, I'm going to click and drag into Photoshop. As everybody knows, I bring everything through Camera Raw, but I don't need that right now, so I'm just going to say OK. And then OK again to accept. And with my image layer above that rectangle we just created, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and put the cursor between the two and make a clipping mask. And that's all there is to it. And if I want to move that image around, with a V key selected for the move tool, I can just click and drag. I can resize it if I need to, but that's good. And like I said, I can always come back to that rectangle I created. I can make the border a whole lot bigger. I can double click on the stroke again. Change to a different gold. Change to whatever I want to. But it's all editable, and that's one quick and easy way to do it if you have pattern files. Now, sometimes you may not have pattern files and you may only have image files like textures, JPEGs, TIFFs, PNGs, whatever you have, and you don't have patterns. So that works too, and let me show you how I would do that. Now I used the custom shape tool again because like I said, I want to keep it editable. And I started to draw out the outer box, and then I was going to draw out the inner box and subtract from front. And I realized I forgot that they were pretty new to Photoshop, and I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. So what I did instead of all that is I just drew the outer box, and then I drew a second box, and that'll be the inner box, and I just made it slightly smaller. So the smaller I make it, the wider the border on the other one is. And like I said, these are both editable, so you can change them at any time. Then I brought in my image layer, and I just clipped it to the box to get the border. And I brought in the picture for the center and clipped it to the inner box. So whether you have pattern files or pictures, it works either way.